Welcome to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Be warned, the discussions in this podcast will contain detailed spoilers. For spoiler-free reviews of newly released films, please check out our channel Reviews Without Remorse on YouTube and VidMe. Enter at your own risk and enjoy the show.
And welcome to the podcast of All Legends and Heroes. My name is David, and my life is forever changed by a man with a gun in a crime alley. And coming to us live by Skype connection, the true last son of Krypton, my good friend Joe.
Truth, justice, and the American way.
Always the American way. This is episode 39, and in this show we will discuss Rian Johnson, director of Looper and the upcoming Star Wars The Last Jedi, is being tapped to do an all-new Star Wars trilogy unrelated to the Skywalker saga. Speaking of cinematic sagas that won't go away, Amazon has just announced that they have acquired the rights to do an adaptation of The Lord of the Rings as an episodic television show. And, just in time for Justice League, Joe and I will deep dive into Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. How's Vegas treating you, my man?
Vegas. Well, Vegas is Vegas. I have not had 5 minutes to get out and see it yet, but I landed this morning, but working, and I'm beat. I am beat. All I can say is thank you for hosting, editing, just leading the way on these shows, because my brain is shot.
No worries, man. It's my pleasure. You kidding me? I'm having a ball with this.
Good.
You know, I'm not sleeping much, but I'm having a ball.
Yeah, that's the trade-off.
Let the past die. Kill it. If you have to. That's the only way to become what you were meant to be.
So, first story. Let me read this verbatim off of StarWars.com. For director Rian Johnson, Star Wars The Last Jedi was just the beginning of his journey in a galaxy far, far away. Lucasfilm is excited to announce that Johnson will create a brand new Star Wars trilogy, the first of which he is also set to write and direct with longtime collaborator Ram Bergman on board to produce. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we were just talking about how, like, Kathleen Kennedy and the Star Wars group seem to be firing directors left, right, center, and forwards and backwards. And now here we have a director that not only seems to have endeared himself to them, but they're actually putting him in charge of a whole new trilogy. And I mean, this to me is kind of huge, because whatever this trilogy is going to be the basis for future Star Wars films, as far as I'm concerned.
Have they said where this is going to sit in the timeline?
They have not. It could be anywhere. It could be far in the future. It could be the Old Republic. I would love it if they did the Old Republic. And by the way, if anybody out there hasn't played it, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic came out in 2003. Superb video game and an excellent showing of what the galaxy might have been thousands of years before Star Wars.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really skeptical about this one, which is funny because I've sort of been I've been all in favor of these little offshoot films. I thought Rogue One was great. I love the whole concept of it. I thought that was a really great way to sort of flesh out the rest of the Star Wars universe. Tell us stories that take place in this universe that don't necessarily have to do with the Skywalker family. But the idea of a trilogy kind of, that makes me a little nervous, because I feel like, I don't know, like we had the first 4, 5, and 6, and then we had the prequels, and now we're doing the last trilogy, and I'm thinking like a whole nother trilogy. That I don't know, that almost breaks the mold too much for me.
I can see that. I could. But then again, I also thought that the Clone Wars cartoon series was a stupid idea, and I wound up getting proven wrong about that. I wound up liking that quite a lot. I thought that the Star Wars Rebels series, which kind of only peripherally takes place in the universe, was a dumb idea, and I've been enjoying that as well. It depends upon where he's going and what story he's telling. If he's talking about what if the new... the way I look at it is, by the end of this final trilogy, that's going to be the end of the Skywalker saga, I believe. Like, I think the Skywalkers will be done. So why not just start with the next generation of Jedis? Or, why not continue the story of Rey? There's one way you can go, depending upon how well they wind up doing her.
Right.
Or what her parentage is. You never know. She could be Luke's daughter. Or whatever. I have no idea. But I kind of feel like that there's a lot in the galaxy that you can explore, and there's a lot that you can do. Will it be successful? That's a completely different subject. But you have to figure, like I said at the beginning at the top of this, for a company that's been firing directors left, right, and center to just give the literal keys to the kingdom to this guy is kind of a huge vote of confidence.
Yeah, and it's funny for us to right now have to take a guess as to whether or not we think this is a good idea, because we're still a month or two shy of The Last Jedi. I guess this is proof that they are pretty happy with what they've gotten. They must be happy with what he's delivered if they're ready to do this. So, not having seen it, I can't say yet. Looper was a great film. I thought that was good. Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm as always interested to see what they do with it. A little nervous about it. I'll be honest. I mean, the thing about Star Wars to me that there was always this untapped thing was that, George Lucas created a great story about great characters, but beyond that, the whole backdrop was fascinating, and that's why you had whole fan sites dedicated to fan films of Star Wars. But I mean, like people have done, I guess, their own little films about different things, but Star Wars had a whole genre of people doing fan films because that backdrop was so rich. There were so many things you could do in that world, and I always wondered why that was so untapped. And I felt like Rogue One was the first step in branching out and saying, okay, let's see what else we can do in this world. But yeah, a whole new trilogy. That's interesting. That almost says to me that they realize that of the trilogies we've gotten thus far, we've gotten one that was pretty good, one that was awful, one that's already started off on a wobbly footing, and they're probably,
which we will cover later.
Yeah. So I guess they might be saying to themselves, let's do a really good one from like a really good whole trilogy and see what we can do. I don't know. So I got my fingers crossed for it.
I do too. I'm hopeful.
Yeah.
Oh, after the entire, it's like Rogue One has stuck into me. It's all about hope.
Right.
The greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said. The chances, the changes are all yours to make. The mold of your life is in your hands to break.
So, Monday, November the 13th, Amazon Studios has acquired the rights to adapt The Lord of the Rings into a multi-season television series for a reported cost. Now, this is just to get the rights of $250 million. Wow. They haven't even started doing a single thing, cast anybody or anything like that. But there it is, $250 million. Basically, this is Amazon's attempt to do Game of Thrones.
Okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. It's amazing to me that is really caught on. Like, when we were younger, could you imagine? I mean, this is sort of like the sword and sorcery world that, film franchises, struggled in. Like probably the biggest names you could think of are like the Conan the Barbarian movies and Krull, It's amazing to me that this is really caught on as a full-blown mainstream genre. So, yeah, this is interesting.
It has a lot of potential because if they with these rights, the rumor is not only do they have the rights to the Lord of the Rings, but they also have the rights to the Silmarillion. Silmarillion.
That's easy for you to say.
It's not easy for me to say. Basically, it is a prequel book. It was the Bible that Tolkien had written that told the entire story of the events leading up to the Lord of the Rings. And it was like the backstory of Sauron and Sauron and so on and so forth. So supposedly they're going to incorporate elements of that into this, which the movies couldn't do because they weren't given the rights to do it.
Okay.
So, considering the success of Game of Thrones, and I mean, at the time when Game of Thrones came out, really only like the hardcore of the geek world truly knew that show. I mean, this is a huge name. This is,
yeah.
I think, unless they really, 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 really royally screw it up, which is quite possible, because this is going to be an expensive endeavor. I don't know if they're going to do it like a book a season or a chapter or whatever. I have no idea, because there's a lot of things this is going to be filled. Not to mention the fact there's a lot of padding in there. I don't know how well they're going to translate it. I have no idea. Have you ever heard of a character by the name of Tom Bombadil?
You're asking the wrong guy. I think
Okay. See, that's what I mean. He was actually a big part of the Fellowship of the Rings in helping the hobbits get to get to Aragorn.
Mm.
And Tom Bombadil he was constantly singing the entire time. So I don't know how well that's going to translate. Even Peter Jackson, who was a self-professed fan of the series, just was like, I don't know how to do Tom Bombadil. I've got 3 movies to do it, and I don't know how to do it, so screw it. I don't know. It will be interesting, but even more interesting. I mean, we're the 2 biggest stories we have to talk about right now are just whispers in imagination at this point. We really don't know a lot, and I kind of wouldn't mind a more complete Lord of the Rings that's more faithful to the books. But on the other hand, it's a little too soon, don't you think?
Yeah, it does sort of feel that way, doesn't it? I mean, Peter Jackson did 2 big trilogies for both series, and yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it depends how you tackle it, really. You don't do the same thing. Like, are they planning to do this series as the book cover to cover, the whole series cover to cover, or are they just going to do little tales that happen in this world?
I don't know. I would depend. I guess we won't know more until we find out who like the show lead is supposed to be, or any of the actors, who's involved. Getting casting, etc. I don't know. It's way too early, and we're probably not going to know probably for months. Probably I'd say within a month or 2 they'll announce whoever the showrunner is going to be, and then probably 4 months after that they'll start announcing casting.
Right.
So we got a little while ahead of us, but some very weird things going on in the world of supposed cinematic universes.
Yeah.
Between Star Wars and now Lord of the Rings.
Our fantasy universes, yeah. It's again, but in both cases, though, I think what's interesting is that, like I said, in both situations, you had such a rich backdrop that they figured it's like we built the playground, let's play in it. Let's see what we can do with it.
Which, in the hands of the right person, it could work. Yeah. Absolutely, it could work. But I don't know how much can translate cinematically. Is my thing.
Yeah. Well, but again, think of how much we've praised TV series versus film now, in the fact that they can take their time and explore different things in different ways, the way a 2-hour, 3-hour film, even a trilogy, can't necessarily do. Mm-hmm. It can take its time and linger in different areas, little corners of these little worlds, and talk about them.
Yeah, but even Game of Thrones suffered. When Game of Thrones was being very faithful to the books, Game of Thrones suffered from a lot of instances of, get on with it.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it. Get on with it.
Even though they cut stuff out from the books and everything like that, there were still moments that were just like paddling, rushing down the river, and then paddling. It's actually only been the last... Here's the funny part. Since they have surpassed the position of the books, it's only been from that moment forward that things have been rolling along like a goddamn steamroller down a hill.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see. And really, I almost am. It's just to me a big story because, like I was saying, it's so early, so soon since the Lord of the Rings. I still have my Lord of the Rings extended edition Blu-rays sitting up there, and I watch them every once in a while. I enjoy them that much. So I don't know. It's a hard road that you're going to be fighting, as far as I'm concerned. To me, it's no different than when they first announced Ben Affleck as Batman, when like the corpse of Christian Bale's Batman hadn't even cooled.
Right.
You will give the people of Earth an ideal to strive towards. They will race behind you. They will stumble. They will fall. But in time, they will join you in the sun. In time, you will help them accomplish wonders.
Clark Kent, one of the last of an extinguished race disguised as an unremarkable human, is forced to reveal his identity when Earth is invaded by an army of survivors who threaten to bring the planet to the brink of destruction. Written by David S. Goyer, based on a story by David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan, directed by Zack Snyder. Ladies and gentlemen, Man of Steel.
The kind of sort of cornerstone beginning to the DC Cinematic Universe.
You know, it's funny. When the credits started rolling, and one thing I'm going to compliment this movie on, I thought Hans Zimmer's soundtrack was great. I thought it was a nice way of like still kind of saying we're recognizing John Williams was a freaking genius when he did the music, but we went and did our own thing. I was quite okay with the soundtrack. So when the credits were rolling, the first thing that popped into my head was they had no idea that this was the start of a DC Cinematic Universe.
No. I still say to this day, they did not do this film with a bigger universe in mind. Because frankly, having rewatched this film again, it really did remind me just how different feeling it is from anything having to do with Batman v Superman or what I've seen so far in the Justice League trailers. It looks so far removed. And I for something that we've said before about the Justice League trailers and Batman v Superman, for something that prides itself on being gritty and realistic, it's really not. It's just as far as I'm concerned, it's just as far towards comic book-ish and in the bad way that you can get. Man of Steel tries very hard to do a realistic, epic film, I think. Does it succeed? We'll talk about it. But I feel like the intent...
We are talking about it.
The intent here, I think, was definitely to do a very grounded, take on Superman. Grounded yet epic in its own way. And I also feel like it tries to out-epic the Donner films, frankly. As I watched it again, I realized, I said, almost beat for beat, this really is a retelling of Donner's Superman 1 and 2. And it's almost like they take every single beat and they try to do it better and more epic, more realistic, and I make my finger quotes as I say realistic. Some of it is kind of realistic, but other in other ways not. I still sort of say to myself, a lot of the dourness of this, again, that dour Superman started here, not as bad as Batman v Superman, but you still got that whole, boy, it sure sucks to be Superman routine. And, again, I mean, they've done that before, and I get that would be a partially real thing. But again, they overplay that in a way that I don't think makes any sense anymore. And put it this way, just as an example to throw out there to kick off the discussion. The part when Clark Kent is working at a truck stop someplace, and some random
after he had just been working on a crabfish.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Now he's kind of like David Banner from The Incredible Hulk, where he's going from town to town until something happens and he has to move on.
All you need is a little piano tinkle playing in the background. You've got it going.
Right. Yeah. So he's right. So now he's working as a busboy in a truck stop, and of course, a couple guys start grabbing the waitresses' asses and stuff, and he steps in, and they all start to pick on him. Right? The guy just pours a beer in it. Like, throws beer in his face, pours it over his head, throws something at him as he's walking away, and Clark just does nothing and walks off. And I'm saying to myself, not for nothing, Henry Cavill is still humongous, right? He's still a huge dude. So even if he's just kind of trying to play it mild-mannered, I don't see any guy walking up to him and dumping a beer in his face. And not for nothing, but you can do something. The whole martyr idea that you have to sort of walk away and do absolutely nothing, but then of course later on, he turns the guy's truck into a pretzel with with the telephone pole sticking through it. It's like, yeah, okay, this whole thing of not letting them know that you're Superman is you're kind of not doing it right.
Yeah.
If you just sort of just push the guy and knocked him over and something or other, again, he's a big dude, so there's no reason why that wouldn't happen.
In the movie's defense, okay, you and I both know a friend who didn't care about the size of the person that he wanted to fight. So
I'm not saying
when the beer hits, you don't care about that part. And that's only the smallest defense, but the scene itself sticks as ridiculous.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Like I said, the fact that a guy might mouth off to him, that's fine. Okay, fine. But then why he has to sit there and take it, walk away, and then turn the truck upside down does not make a lick of sense. Again, I mean, I suppose I guess what they're saying is this, and the thing they tried to do with this whole, with Kevin Costner as Jonathan Kent and him, I guess the point was that he really didn't have a handle on his skills, so that if he did take even the slightest swing at this guy or try to do, he could have murdered him or something like that, and it could have been really bad. All right, I get that, but they also did things in this film with that I didn't really get either. Like the idea that, like there was parts when, remember the part when they show him when he's younger and he's in the classroom. He starts to freak out because he's seeing the skeletons and whatever he sees. He can't focus on. I didn't. That seemed odd to me because I'm saying to myself, it's not like you're an Earthling who just got these powers and now you have to. No. He's had them his entire life. So it's almost like as a baby learns to walk and crawl, why wouldn't he learn to see these things and to just it was almost like the powers came later. And he can't control them. And I'm like, but why would that be, though? That doesn't make sense.
Oh, goodness.
I'm already thinking,
ladies and gentlemen,
into this one, right?
No, ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna throw this out here because what you're listening to now, when we start getting to the Batman movies, that's gonna be me. Superman is Joe's guy. Joe is a huge Superman fan. I am a huge Batman fan. Yeah. So the reason for this passion is because this is a man who loves this character. So
yeah.
and I can't disagree with any of the things he's talking about. No, you're right. They made a point at one point in the movie to specifically say you've been soaking up the radiation of Earth the entire time, and blah blah.
Yeah.
That whole scene felt like a scene more out of X-Men than out of a Superman movie. Like,
yes.
When the mutants puberty hits and the mutants' powers just
exactly.
materializing.
Yes, it's a perfect example. Yeah.
So it was. The funny part is here's. The thing that kills me is I was watching this and I said, man, if this wasn't a Superman movie, that's kind of a cool scene. This kid who just suddenly gets confused. Oh my God, what's all this sound? I can't take it. It's too loud. I hear everything. And the mother coming in and talking to him and getting him to focus down is actually a great scene. It just has no place in a Superman movie.
Right. Yeah, part of the problem is, and it's funny, and now that you mentioned the fact that I just love Superman so much, I should really I can throw some perspective on it. Again, I'm a huge Donner fan. Okay, I thought they were brilliant. Of course, the last two, were a little wah. Then the Superman Returns came along, and that was a dud. That was a real dud, and again, we'll talk about that someday. And then when Man of Steel came along, I was like, okay, now this is fresh off of the Dark Knight trilogy. And they were, you could tell they were looking to try it now with Superman to see if they could put the same kind of realistic edge to Superman. And I kind of had high hopes. In fact, I still remember the trailers coming out. And when the trailers came out, I was a little nervous because I was kind of afraid they were going to over-serious this up and whatever. My brother, who was the biggest critic, he was really looking forward to it because he thought that the trailers had like a Terrence Malick feel to it, and he was really happy with this artsy kind of way they were going to possibly do this and give it a more epic feel, which they succeed at in a lot of levels. But yeah, then the actual film comes out, and you're kind of like, all right. And again, there's a lot of things in here that it's almost like first of all, I've always heard people say that Superman is so hard to write for because he is just so powerful and he's impervious to everything. And I've never understood that. That made no sense to me because I would think you have a different set of challenges if you're Superman. You might be godlike and you might be first of all, they've kind of overwritten him, I think, to be that way. Because the early days, Superman was not super duper ridiculously powerful. And it was almost like, I guess, blame it on maybe when Donner spun the world backwards. And people would sort of say, well, if he could fly that fast all along, why didn't he just fly that fast before? And I suppose there's something to that argument, but I felt like the response to that was movies like Superman Returns and Man of Steel, where they really focus on the science of Superman. It's like when he takes off now, he always blows the sound barrier and like just certain things happen, and they try to get too realistic in what it might be. For example, like you get the fight at the end with Superman and Zod, and I've never understood. Some people say, well, this is what it would be like. I don't think so. Even if you get two bodies flying through skyscrapers, they're still small bodies versus the entire skyscraper, so I don't see why the whole building would come tumbling down. There was a lot of overdoing it in that. But again, it's like they were so fascinated with the realistic proposal that these super beings fighting it out over the city, what it would result in, that they end up with this big mess of disaster porn. And again, it's just too much. It's too much. I mean, even just sticking with what I'm talking about the science part. Like, I remember that shot in Superman Returns when the guy walks up to him with the gun and shoots him right square in the eye, right?
In the eyeball, yes.
And the bullet just dink bounces off his eyeball. And I thought that was kind of it was a cool idea. It was a cool shot, but I was like, but no. That's not what would happen. I mean, for that to be the case, for a bullet to just bounce off of his eyeball like that would mean that if Lois Lane went to put her hand on him, she'd probably break her finger or something, like break, you know what I mean? Because basically what they're saying is that his skin would not give in any way, shape, or form, even to the acceleration of a bullet. So if a person grabs him, there should be no give. He should just be like solid stone. Like grabbing a stone. So, again, that overemphasis on the science part of it, I think, is kind of backfiring in a lot of ways. And like I said, and that's why I feel like the parts when they take Clark on the Kryptonian ship, and like he started to freak out, right? And he was like spitting up blood in like 2 seconds or whatever. I remember thinking like, really? I don't know. I get the idea behind it, and I mean it was almost like doing kryptonite without actual kryptonite, and there was a logic to it, but I don't know. I kind of just felt like, but Superman flies all around the galaxy all the time. It doesn't really, like, just because he's out of the reach of the sun doesn't mean he suddenly turns into like weak man. No,
whoa. I'm going to stop you there for a second. You're on a wonderful rant, and I'm absolutely wanting to hear everything you have to say. But they specifically said the environment inside the spaceship was a Kryptonian environment.
Yeah.
That's why Lois had to get the oxygen thing for herself. And yes, he's part Kryptonian, but he's also part, Earthling now. And that was his body fighting between the two. I understood what they were going for. I'm not saying it worked, but they actually did have an explanation as to what it was that was happening.
They did. I mean, they pitched it well. And like I said, I mean, there was a logic. But again, I just don't know. It's almost like if you're going to start down that road, like, because again, why is Lois not affected by that? I mean, Lois Lane is now going to a different planet's environment. She seems completely unaffected. All she needs is a mask and she's fine to breathe. But, like, why wouldn't the gravity just sort of crush her all of a sudden if that was what they were doing? You know what I mean? It's almost like if you're going to start off with this, you got to really see it through.
You know what? You're absolutely right, because they do specifically point out that Earth has a lighter gravity than Krypton.
Right.
So, yeah, it should have been impossible for her to walk.
Exactly, yeah. So, Again, they, like, it's almost like why open those cans of worms?
If you're not going to walk through the distance.
Yeah, or maybe just don't open it at all, even if you can walk through it, because again, it's like at the end of the day, is that a satisfying use of the Superman character? Again, they're trying so hard to give him, challenges, and to make it seem like I said before, they always say it's hard to write for Superman. I don't find that. I don't find that. I think if you raise the challenges up to be Superman level challenges. And
right.
I mean, and he's still a human being. I mean, even though he's Superman, doesn't mean he's always going to get the girl. I mean, probably. I mean, we see the Lois Lane. That was the thing too. The idea that Lois Lane knows he's Superman before we even get rolling was weird for me.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually liked that. I felt kind of it legitimized her character a little bit because she is a reporter. And I felt like we got more of Lois Lane reporter in this movie than pretty much any of the previous movies so far. She felt like an actual reporter to me.
I agree, and the detective work she does to actually track him down, I thought made sense.
Yeah, it was pretty logical how she managed to track him down.
Yeah.
I'm going to ding this movie for a lot of things. That's not going to be one of them. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say that welcome to the Joe podcast, because I feel like he's going to be taking the center stage on this one, and that's okay. That is okay. I am very, very fine with that. That's cool.
Listen, I'll be honest with you. As great as that sounds, there is a lot of this film that it doesn't grab me. It doesn't work for me, but yet I still can't put my finger on why. Because, like I said, I feel like they do try to do the Donner storyline. They do follow very much beat for beat things that happen there.
Right.
And they try to focus on it harder. Like, it's almost like, the conversation in the Donner film. His father has a conversation. I know you can be kicking touchdowns, but they elevate that to several conversations that are a little deeper and a little more, he's a little bullied in the Donner Superman. Here he's very bullied. And again, like very bullied, and it's like, well, why? Why are they picking on this kid? What did he do? Like, he's not bothering anybody. So yeah, I mean, I felt like, then of course the Zod stuff, and that was one of the things that sort of bugged me, is that at one point, Superman finds a Kryptonian ship, and he finds Jor-El inside the ship, or he uses the little device and this is how he finds out who he is. He comes home, and he finds his mother there, and he says, "Mom, I just found out who I was. I found my parents, whatever." Literally, during that conversation is when the TV starts to go, and General Zod is calling for Superman. And I'm like, wow, that timing was okay. We're gonna go right into that from here, are we? Okay. So again, it was
they did. I can't believe I'm the one defending this movie in a small way.
No, do it.
They did kind of explain that. He specifically said that when he activated that ship, they received the signal, and that's how they knew where to go and find it.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is very true. They do cover. I mean, again, even the stuff I was saying before about Lois Lane and the ship and why it is. For the most part, they do a lot of work to covering their tracks. There's not. Right. I wouldn't say there's not a ton of plot holes in it. I'm not trying to say this is not a shabbily written film. They do put work into trying to make it work and to make things coherent. So, like I said, that's why I scratch my head and say, okay, they're doing it, and they're doing it well, but again, it's like the heart is not there. In the same, I guess you could say the same way there's no heart in the Batman v Superman, where like Superman just looks.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Right. I mean, the way that Superman is just miserable when he's rescuing people and stuff, and like this was sort of the start of that, and so again, like. I mean, the film works for what it's trying to do, but again, at the end of the day, I find it very cold, and not a lot of heart to it, and and again, there's that overemphasis on trying to make the suit look really like there are some scenes in this movie where the Superman's suit just looks black, and
pretty much,
and I said that is so strange to me, like even the part when like when he surrenders and he comes in to get interrogated and he's wearing the handcuffs, he's in the the mirrors there. his suit just looks jet black in some of those shots. It is so oddly dark. They you know, the contrast is so amped up that the background is white and his clothes are dark, like black dark. And I'm like, again, I find that frustrating. It's like we don't, you know, it's almost like we wish Superman didn't wear all these, you know, red and blue clothes, because we want this really, you know, earthy, you know, dark movie, and this costume is not working with it. But again, that's the whole thing. Batman's supposed to be dark, Superman's supposed to be light, and this is what they never seem to get. They don't understand that he was, again, Batman versus Superman, day versus night, night versus. I'm like, yeah, that's what it should have been. It should have been
versus God.
Yeah, but they say day versus night. That's what that should have been. But they don't make Superman day, you know. I don't know. He's supposed to be really uplifting, and it just felt like, I mean, it was like somebody said, like,
a symbol of hope. The S is supposed to mean for a symbol of hope,
right?
And where is that in this movie?
Exactly. I mean, you know, again, like, people keep saying you could not do another Donner Superman. I totally disagree. And they try to do this as more like a realistic take on Superman, as if, like, what if a real guy was Superman? But Superman wouldn't be a real guy. He would be whatever he wants to be, because again, for the same reason you say it's hard to write.
Which is actually a theme of this movie.
What's that?
Which is actually a theme of this movie. He could be what he wants to be.
Yeah.
That was the whole reason why Jor-El did what he did. So that he could be what he wanted to be. And you would think that with that type of theme in the background that they could bring it together, and yet it didn't.
Yeah. And again, for a film that I think is written well, I mean, I do find it to be a smartly written story. It's not that they couldn't have done it; they just chose not to. They chose not to focus on the positive, uplifting parts. I mean, this story is written so well that I even empathize with General Zod. Like, there are many parts in this film where I'm completely agreeing with him. like even in the beginning, when I guess they pretty much resigned to the fact that Krypton is about to blow up. Like, they have killed, they've destroyed society, and I didn't understand all the harvesting of the people and the controlling of the population, and okay, then they fed off the core. They reached into their own core for energy as opposed to whatever. Well then, okay, when General Zod and his goons bust in, right? And Jor-El's going like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, basically he was saying that this is a revolution because these boobs have basically destroyed society. And Jor-El's sitting there going like, "Oh my God, this is so terrible. You're so, you know, you can't do this." I was siding with General Zod, saying like, "Look, if there was ever a good reason to have a revolution, this is it. These knuckleheads have destroyed society and killed their own people." And, you know, so I mean, again, I'm siding with him there. And then later on, as he was trying to you know, save the Codex, which has all the DNA of all the Kryptonians or whatever. I didn't. It's not that I loved his idea, but when you thought about it, I could completely understand his passion. And I mean, he's basically saving his universe, all the people that or potential people or whatever. The world he, you know, grew up on is about to be demolished and forgotten. And so I was completely siding with him. So again, it's a well-written story, but I don't know. But now you sort of got me in a position where I'm not really rooting that much for the hero, kind of rooting a little bit for the villain.
You know what? Give a little credit to Michael Shannon, the actor who played General Zod, who I felt he was an excellent part of the movie. He was really, really good in his part. Even at his most manic, he just seemed so like that famous quote, "I will find him."
General Zod, for the crimes of murder and high treason, the Council has sentenced you and your fellow insurgents to 300 cycles of somatic reconditioning. Do you have any last words?
You won't kill us yourself! You wouldn't sully your hands, but you'll damn us to a black hole for eternity! Jor-El was right. You're a pack of fools! Every last one of you! And you believe your son is safe? I will find him. I will reclaim what you have taken from us. I will find him. I will find him, Lara. I will find him!
Yeah,
You know, in the trailers, I'm like, oh my god, that's a little over the top. But when it happens, it's like, okay, all right, yes, this guy means freaking business.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I thought he was... The casting in this is pretty good. Michael Shannon...
Nearly across the board.
Yeah, I think Michael Shannon is excellent as General Zod. The Kents were good. I thought Diane Lane is fine. Kevin Costner was interesting. I thought... And you know, a lot of people sort of picked on, you know, the scene after, you know, he rescues the kids in the bus. And then there's the talk with Kevin Costner. He says, what am I supposed to do, let him die? And he goes, maybe. And a lot of people sort of singled that out as, you know, look, he's basically telling him to let people die. Like, what's wrong with this picture? Like, we want an uplifting, positive... I don't mind that as much as a lot of people do. I thought that was okay, because I can understand. I think they take it too far later. But the idea that he's trying to convey is like, look, you know, natural things are going to happen, and it's not necessarily wrong for you to allow other things to just happen without your intervention. I didn't find that as negative as a lot of people did. I was willing to cut that some slack.
I don't know, man.
That's why I loved it.
I had a serious problem with it because, to me, the story of Superman always was that the elves were his parent, were his mother and father, but the Kents were his parents, and it was Jonathan Kent's. You know, let's contrast it, okay? Let's talk about contrast that scene. And we have to. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to. Contrast that scene with Kevin Costner and the young Clark Kent talking about the bus accident. Contrast that with the scene in Donner's Superman where Jonathan Kent and Clark Kent are talking about how I could kick a football. He's like, I know. You can
I was
do all
totally
these
thinking the same
things.
thing. God, yeah.
You contrast the two of those scenes, and they're both pretty much saying the same thing. But in Donner's version, it worked.
Yes. Completely, yeah. You're absolutely 100% correct, and that's a perfect analogy. You're right. That is those two conversations side by side. And this is why I say that this film is redoing the Donner films beat for beat. Yeah, and it made sense when you leave it as allegorical as, look, I know you're here for a reason, but I know it's not to kick touchdowns. As opposed to this film where they try to get more literal and more, again, quote unquote realistic. You know, this is how more like the conversation would be. Well, yeah, or yes and no. Again, you're kind of getting into, you're taking it more literally, and now you're sort of you're discussing it in a way that you're telling him to let people die. I just tell him I don't know. Yeah. I mean, there's a better way to handle that. Something is as blunt as saying, you know, maybe you have to let people die is, I don't know. Like, well, why? I mean, it's and plus they just took the whole thing too far. The whole part with Kevin Costner getting sucked up into the tornado, that completely lost me. I'm like, come on. Well, first of all, it has to happen at the moment where, like, there's that Peter Parker, you know, you're not my father, so stay out of it. You know, they have to have that argument right before the tornado hits. And again, they make Clark Kent.
Oh, the anguish! Oh, the guilt!
Right, yeah, right. And again, you're again taking beats from Donner's, where Clark's father dies in the Donner film, right? And he just says, you know, all the things I could do and I couldn't save him, right? And so he had that kind of that sense of, you know, something was, I should have done something, or I could have done something, or that sort of plagues him later in the film. Like he has a flashback of that later on when he's having the mental, you know, just making the decision to turn back time and do whatever. Anyway, they do it again here with this, but again in a over the top way. They have the argument. Clark is running away into the thing while Kevin Costner goes running off. It was almost like I don't know, like the total wrong person doing the wrong thing just for the sake of that moment where Kevin Costner literally knows he's seconds away from death and waves him down and says, no, don't just let me die. And it's almost like, how far are we going to take this? Like, should Superman just live on this planet forever and never do anything to save anybody? How about saving his own father from a hurricane, which is 20 feet away? I mean, I just felt like again, of all the times to not do something and to hide the Superman, I don't know. You're losing me with
I'm
this
pretty
stuff.
sure. I'm pretty sure he was more than 20 feet away. But if I may add, I'm more than a bird. I'm more than a plane. I'm more than some pretty face beside a train. It's not easy
to be me.
Oh, that's totally going in the show.
That's
It's the lack of joy. It's the lack of like. Here's what this movie is missing. Okay, after he has taken the craft and he's landed it up north, his temporary fortress of solitude of sorts, and he's talking with Jor-El, and Jor-El gives him his suit, and he goes out for the first time, and he's trying to figure out how to fly.
Right.
Okay, that's the most joy you have in the entire movie. That moment when he's finally flying and he finally gets it going and he gets this beautiful like happiness on his face. That was it. That was the last true moment of joy and the most true Superman moment in the entire movie.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's true. And again, like I said, I mean, there's the Donner beat again when he goes to the Fortress of Solitude and now he knows how to fly. Yeah, and again, they focus on the sciencey part of Superman where he's like first jumping and then kind of getting the hang of flying or whatever. Okay, yeah, but you're right. That was the only joyful moment in this film. The only other moment that I kind of can look back on when he spots Lois falling out of the ship, and he goes and catches her, and he catches her, lowers her down to Earth, and that's when the first big kiss happens. And it's like, but
out of the spaceship, yeah.
And again, that's the kind of thing where I'm like, all right, well, that's what I was waiting for, but why is it lacking? Why is it so lacking? And it's just, I don't know, it just seems kind of odd.
And the funny part is, it's not lack of chemistry. I thought that Cavill and Amy Adams had great chemistry.
They were fine.
I thought they worked well. Yeah, no, man, give me a break. I thought that they worked. Don't be so dour. I understand that the movie is being dour. I understand it's not the Superman movie you want. It's not the Superman movie I want. But they did. They had nice chemistry between each other. I felt it at least.
Yeah, listen, I'll agree with that.
And you can see it subsequently. I thought, people complained about the bathtub scene in Batman v Superman between the two of them. I thought it was kind of charming. I thought that was okay. It's a little over the top, but they seem to really dig each other. And sometimes, you take Superman Returns. I like Brandon Routh a lot. He's been in a TV show recently called Legends of Tomorrow, which I've been really, really getting a kick out of. It's fun. He plays the Atom. He plays the guy that can shrink, and it's just a really silly, fun, DC adventure. It's good. You would enjoy it. But that aside, him and whatever the hell her name was, the really skinny woman, had zero chemistry.
Yes.
As Lois and
Agreed.
Clark.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely. You're right. When you put it that way, yes, Yeah, listen, I'm not knocking on the chemistry between Cavill and Adams. I thought that was fine.
But I think that's part of the appeal. I feel like that they cast well in the respect that all the actors work very well against each other. I mean, you have a villain, and you know what? I'm going to give credit to Michael Shannon on this one. You have a villain that has to be a protagonist to both the father and the son, two different actors.
Yeah.
And I felt like he worked that way as an antagonist to both of them. It could have easily not worked between either of them, and yet there was like when he was with Jor-El. When he was with Jor-El, he was like, dude, come on, you and me, we're bros. This is, we totally believe in this stuff.
Right.
And he talks about it later with regret about, I wish I hadn't done it, but I would do it again to save my people. And he sells it. I believe this man meant something to him.
Yeah.
And even with when he first runs into to Clark, to Kal-El, he's not aggressive to him. He's a little aggressive to the Earth, but he's kind of sort of welcoming in as you're a fellow brother. This is not your fault. let's just help each other, and we can make this anew. He doesn't approach him in a villainous manner, and that's what's so frustrating about this movie, is that there's like these moments of I like that, punctuated with way too much of what drugs are you taking.
Yeah.
It's truly schizophrenic. I wanted to love this movie. I really, really did. I thought, if anybody could do the over-the-top story of Superman, it could be Zack Snyder. There was no reason it couldn't work, and it didn't. And it's a shame. It's a tragedy as far as I'm concerned. It's a tragedy that this because it's a tragedy in the respect of that it could have been better. I feel like if they had an opportunity to flesh out some more of the story with a proper sequel to Man of Steel before they went to Batman v Superman, I feel like the entire DC cinematic universe would have had a much better foundation to truly move forward. Because there's good stuff here that they could have worked on in a true sequel to give Superman his best footing before moving on to, oh, by the way, here's Batman.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There was something here. I agree. There is something here that, had they done it differently, could have worked. But again, they focused on the wrong things. They focused on making it realistic. They focused on it's almost like they said, look, Superman is like the greatest superhero, Boy Scout type you could ever imagine. So we don't really have to write for that. We can just focus on the other things, like the realism and the epicness of how we're going to approach this. And, the Superman part will take care of itself. But I don't think that's what happened. I think they lost the essence of Superman in the process.
They did.
They made him, again, much more dour, much more miserable, much more whatever. And, yeah, like you said, there's no joy in it. Even the plot itself with the Codex and, like when Zod shows up and he needs the Codex and there's like spaceships and all this other stuff. I thought it was interesting. Like, you don't think of spaceships in a Superman film. Like, and I thought when they did it, actually, you know what? I'll go back even further, and I will give the movie credit for this. I did find that they did try to get creative in a lot of ways. Like, remember the stuff on Krypton with the faces that would, like, instead of having like all holograms and whatever.
Guilty.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
But they have these sort of faces that look like you're pushing your face through the little nail thing, whatever. Like,
yeah.
I'm not saying I liked that, but I liked the attempt to show us what they think futuristic technology would be. As opposed to, again, like just more holograms and all this other, like every movie now has got holograms. Like we got holograms galore. They try to do something different there. Krypton, I was not crazy about the Avatar nature of Krypton, but you had to give them credit for throwing like when you watch those scenes, there's just so much going on. Like even the moons in the background have like crumbled and everything. They really did get inventive with a lot of their stuff. Again, I didn't like it necessarily, but I appreciated the attempt to really go for a next level of creativity in that respect. And this with the spaceships and all those. I mean, I thought the spaceships that they were flying around in they were pretty good. I thought that was kind of pretty well done, really.
So, Joe, it's time. I mean, we could probably spend another half hour on this, but we're getting close there. So, it is time.
All right, it's time.
It is time. Out of 10. Out of 10, my friend.
I am going to give this movie a 6. I was tempted to go below 5 because, again, 5 is sort of my marker of like would I sit and watch it or not. I honestly, this is the first time I've watched it in years. I saw it in the theater. I may have seen it once or twice after that. I don't remember, but this is the first time I've seen it in a long time. It's not something I seek out. It's not something I enjoy enough to sit and watch. So technically, it should be a little lower than it is. But I do sort of want to give the film its due respect in a lot of ways because they do, again, they tried to do something like more epic than Donner. Something that they felt maybe could be more tangible. Maybe they felt that people would respond better if you could sort of wrap your head around the logic and the science of certain things. The casting is good. That's it. But at the end of the day, it's it's joyless, like you said. It just seems it's cold. It's bleak, and again, they seem to want to apologize for the fact that this is Superman. I want bright colors on the costume. I want a Superman who says, look, and again, like Superman does not have to give in to peer pressure. Not when he's Superman, anyway. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to conform to what other people would be like. So the idea that this is a more realistic Superman, to me, that's very counterintuitive. Superman can be whatever he wants to be. So if he says, I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way, boom, that's it. Like, you can't tell me that Superman wouldn't say that. That you can't tell me that that's not realistic for Superman to be a positive figure, a positive role model in every way, shape, or form. So that essence, that kind of the cynicism that says Superman has to be a little more, I don't buy it. I do not buy it with that character. Superman can be whatever he chooses to be, and this is what the film has told me that this incarnation of Superman chooses to be. I don't like it. I don't like it nearly as much as classic Superman, and I hope that they and then of course it gets worse in the next one. I hope they've learned some lessons possibly and might realize, look, Superman is the pinnacle of just he is the true good person, good-hearted person, does the right thing every single time and doesn't have to guess at it. So anyway, that's I'm going to settle on a 6 and say there are some merits to this film, but it doesn't grab me on a personal level.
I am actually 100% with you on that. I also gave this movie a 6 because even during the rewatch, I kept saying to myself, I'm not. The movie is moving briskly. It's it literally was. He didn't actually show up in costume until 50 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize it was that far into the movie. That's how briskly the movie works. So in some respects, things here are working well. But in other respects, it's like they're ashamed. It's like you said earlier. They're ashamed to be doing a Superman movie. They're not completely convinced that they should be doing a Superman movie. And this is written by the guy that said he could never possibly write Martian Manhunter. He's a ridiculous character.
Yeah.
Right. So that just tells you something. Well, let me tell you a little something about another hero. Okay, his name is Steven Rogers. Okay, mm-hmm. He is the man with the plan, the man who does the right thing no matter what, who stands up for right, who stands up for freedom, for individual and people's freedoms. Okay. People said that doing a Captain America movie was the most ridiculous thing ever. It would not translate. It would not be, so on and so forth. And I'm going to tell you, as a Cap fan, yeah, they did it. Yeah. They translated it. They got him right. Yeah. They were able to have him be, this is about freedom. This is about truth. This is about justice. All that. He still retained the goodness of the person that he was and his belief in the individual freedoms.
Yeah.
That man was preserved. If they can get Captain America right, how do you mess up Superman?
Agreed. I'll tell you something, this is going to be a very strange analogy. If you've ever heard somebody talk about the stock market and how the stock market should be played, whereas, a lot of people, when this certain stock is doing great, oh my God, that stock is doing fantastic, that's when they buy it. And then when things look pretty dour, when it's down, that's when they sell it. But a person who really understands the stock market will tell you that's the exact opposite logic you should use. When everything is down and looking bleak, that's when you buy. When everything is high and everything is wonderful, that's when you sell. I think the same logic can be applied to Superman, because people say, well, because things are so rotten now, because the world is so this, that's why you can't do a positive. No, guys, you're missing the point.
That's when you need him the most.
When you need it the most. Look, think about when the original Richard Donner Superman came out. That was, you're talking about post-Vietnam, post-Watergate. The 70s was kind of a time where the Jimmy Carter era, when everything was just
the gas crisis.
Gas prices, oil, everything. I mean, it was not fun, and nobody was happy. And the movies back then were a lot of disaster films were popular. You
had Poseidon Adventure, you had The French Connection, you had The Towering Inferno, you had the Earthquake movies.
Exactly. Nothing that was really positive, uplifting, and then boom, Superman comes along, and he's just a picture-perfect, nice guy, and that's why it was so loved and embraced. I don't know why they don't get that. It is because we need that right now, that a positive Superman would score on so many levels. I'm telling you, I don't know why they don't seem to get that. And again, this was following up the Dark Knight series. Again, the Dark Knight series works for a very different set of reasons. You
Right.
can't make a Superman movie using the Dark Knight template. It wouldn't work. I mean, I believe there's a way to put these two people in the same world and make it seem logical. But again, you can't apply the same cookie cutter to Superman that you do for Batman.
Jesus, DC, you have a whole animation division that seems to be able to get it right.
Yeah, every time. I tell you, again, I love all those DC movies are phenomenal. They're really excellent.
Who asked you?
Who asked me? It almost sounds, of all the things we talked about, this is going to sound like a cop-out, but I'm going to go with the costume.
You have such a hard-on for superhero costumes.
I really do, but I swear to you. I mean, when you think about it, this is my theory, and I stick with it. Anytime they get the costume right, 9 times out of 10, the movie follows suit. Because again, it's almost like the costume is like the perfect metaphor for how the creators feel about the character. When like, put it this way, the Deadpool where he looks nothing like Deadpool, that just shows you what the creators think of that character. As opposed to later when they do it correctly, So yeah, whenever I see a costume that's when I say something is wrong, 9 times out of 10 it's because the creators don't feel confident in the character that they're giving us.
Right.
So again, when I see the scenes of that black Superman costume, I'm like, what are you guys doing? Why are you doing that? It doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be a symbol of lightness and positiveness and whatever. I don't know why they do that, and I I'm gonna sound like a weirdo, but bring back the underpants. I understand why the hesitancy now to do it, because again, there was a different era when they were drawing comic book costumes. They had circus strongmen had those kind of outfits where
right.
I get that, and I get that it doesn't make a lot of sense today. In fact, and I tell you, when they did Superman Returns and his underwear part was getting smaller and smaller, like a pair of like Calvin Klein underpants, I was like, nah, guys, no. But here they just decided to get rid of it altogether, and I'm like, okay. But I like I said, I really wish they would just get back to a more authentic Superman costume.
Well, for me, wow. You hear that? You hear that? Way to take away the god among mortals by giving him I'm pooping face with corresponding grunt when things get tough. Every single time. I'm saving Lois from the gravity well. I'm killing Zod. Which, by the way, we didn't discuss. I actually don't have a problem with him killing Zod.
Yeah, boy, that is a great argument, and it's great because I love when I hear people say, Superman killed Zod in Superman 2 and nobody blinked. And that's true. That's very true. And I don't mind him. I mean, again, how was this going to end? Mm-hmm. I mean,
in the context of this movie, it made sense. And he wasn't soulless about it either. He was obviously upset because he screamed.
But and again, that's exactly right. See, but this goes back to everything I've been saying about this film, is where they've taken things that happened in sort of a general way, and they've done it more specific, and they've tried to get more literal. And it's like, again, like they're trying to do this. Superman 2 ended with Superman killing General Zod. There, it was like, punched him out, threw him down the thing, and everybody smiled and went home. Here, they're trying to get much more realistic about the idea that he's killing another human being, and how's he going to feel about it? And again, I didn't mind that he killed him, I guess, because like I said, how else was this going to end? I mean, Zod is going to go on and on and on and just wreak havoc until somebody puts him down.
Right.
And Superman's got to do it. But again, to do the part where you have to have a moment of choice, and you have to make the conscious decision: am I going to kill this guy or not? And you snap his neck, and then the scream afterwards. Again, okay, but I understand what you're trying to tell me here, and that this was not an easy decision for him to make. But again, you've done it in the most dour, depressing, sad kind of way. So I don't have to like it. You could have done it differently and just said, look, he punched him and he flew off and landed in the Grand Canyon and he found him and he's dead. Oh boy, that's over. Like, you didn't have to make him practically cry at the end because he killed him.
No, I think the scream was too over the top. I think they could have sold that scene, like the difficulty of him making that choice and him like coming to terms with having to make that choice. They could have done that without the scream. They absolutely could have done that without the scream. He could have sold it without it. He could have just had this look on his face like, look what you made me do, you son of a bitch. Yeah. And then just kind of like, it's over.
Right.
I had no choice. And then just kind of stand up like, as Superman and be like, it's over.
Right. Or I had to do what I had to do, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah. You could have sold that without the scream.
Yeah.
For your consideration.
I'm going to go with the cast and say that I thought, particularly Michael Shannon, but I didn't want to just focus on him because I thought the whole cast did work pretty well. Shannon he's a spectacular villain. I mean, he's just born to play a villain. So
have you ever seen Boardwalk Empire?
No. All
right. I'm going to work on that for you.
I mean, he's a terrific actor. He was spectacular in this. I was convinced at everything he said, to the point where I was almost rooting for him at some point. Honestly, he's a very well written character, and he plays it really well. But I thought the Kents were cast well. I thought Samuel Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White was a pretty good choice.
Yep.
I liked him in that role. Didn't really have enough to do, I don't think, but still very good in the role. I think Henry Cavill makes a great Superman. I mean, he's got a chiseled. I mean, again, a lot of people don't like him as Superman. I don't think it's his fault.
No, I don't think so either.
I think it's what he's given.
Yeah. If you want to get a better idea, I don't know if you've seen it, but for ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get a better idea of the type of acting that Cavill can do, you should see The Man from U.N.C.L.E., the movie version of Man from U.N.C.L.E. that was done by, Guy Ritchie.
Yeah.
Okay, that's kind of, he plays the CIA agent, right? He plays the American CIA agent. That part was more Clark Kent than than we got in the Superman movie.
Yeah, I agree. And frankly, I think he'd probably do pretty good as James Bond. Frankly, some people are like, yeah, no. I think he would do just fine as James Bond.
I wouldn't complain too much about him as James Bond.
So he was fine. I thought everybody really did a great job cast wise. So I think props to the movie for that. Again, it has a lot of good competencies, but that's what I'll center on.
That sounds good. For me, all right, I like the Krypton scenes. Okay, fine. It had some Pandora elements. but this was the first time we really got a good look at Krypton and its people and its society. And to be honest with you, if we hadn't gotten a good look at that society, the arguments of Zod's reasoning for why he did what he did wouldn't have worked. And I feel like this nice introduction to Krypton. You've never really seen Krypton before. They're actually doing a TV series about Krypton. And I really appreciated the level of detail that they put into it. They could have just done the whole glass shards, crisscrossing each other like they did in the original movie. But I liked that they at least made it seem like this was an ancient society. And it's been around hundreds of years. And the way that things were just done so matter-of-factly to introduce, oh, look, they fly on those Pandora dragons. Yeah. Oh, look, they've got sort of like laser beams. Oh, look, they've got these face nail things that they use to communicate with. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the look of it. I enjoyed the feel of it. I thought it was nice to finally see Krypton as nothing more than just a side note in Superman's life and get to really kind of know it. Was it a great representation of Krypton? No, but I really appreciated the effort, and I felt it was like my favorite part of the movie. Maybe I originally was going to say him first taking flight as my favorite scene in the movie, but honestly, as much as I enjoyed that, I really enjoyed, when I was watching the Krypton scenes for the first time, when I first started watching this again, I was like, oh, you know what? This is actually pretty nice.
I'll give you that.
Even the phallic-shaped rockets. I'll even forgive him for the phallic-shaped rockets.
Yeah.
Well, and thus ends Superman Man of Steel. A fine enough movie, not the way you start a cinema. It's no Iron Man. It's no way to start a cinematic universe. And I'm pretty sure Zack Snyder, David Goyer, and Christopher Nolan didn't intend it to be. It just became it. It just became that, and they just had to roll with it.
I agree. I think when the cinematic universes were being rolled out, and they said, "Oh shit, we gotta do one," they were like, "Well, where are we now?" Well, we got a Superman movie that's okay. Let's jump from there. And go forward. I totally agree. I do not think that this was intended to be a cinematic universe building anything.
Well, then it's time, my man. Do you know what this means? What next week is?
I sure do. This is I'll say this. We've had a spectacular run all year long of superhero films. We've had one knockout after another, including the DC movie that was out this year.
Yep.
Is it in any way feasible that streak is going to run the entire year?
Joe, when I was a 12-year-old kid, if you had told me that a live-action Justice League movie would make me uncomfortable at the idea of going to see it, I would have told you were a crack-smoking jerk. And here we are. I am so bracing for impact for this movie, it's not even funny. The funny part is, I'm probably going to wind up liking it simply because I'm so braced for impact that even if it's mediocre, I'll be like, oh god, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Well, there's that. For damn sure. I totally agree with you there. I think because the expectations are low. But then again, this thing, because of how it came about, with Zach leaving, I don't know.
Through no fault of his own. Let's, make sure that we point that out.
Absolutely. But, different hands and different whatevers, different reshoots. I'm sort of at the point where I'm almost at the blank slate stage with this, where I'm saying to myself, not completely blank slate, but closer to a blank slate, where I'm saying to myself, like, this could be something interesting. I don't know. I'm not predicting, but we'll see. I don't know. I totally agree with you. If you told me when I was younger, like Super Friends is going to be a big screen hit, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't wait. But now that it's here, it's like, oh.
Yeah, I know. But we got to do it, my man. We will be reviewing Justice League next week, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
We honestly, we have no idea how we're going to feel. So this is going to be very, very interesting, to say the least. And on that note, sir, you're in Vegas. Go out. Go do Vegas things.
Oh, I'm hitting the pillow very shortly, my friend, but thank you.
Well, go get a steak or something, for God's sake.
At some point this week I will, trust me, but yeah, tonight, not tonight. But, and again, like I said, thank you. I am extremely exhausted, tired, run down from this trip, and thank you, my friend, for assuming the duties and excelling with them.
No worries, my man. Anytime, and thank you. Thank you for the compliment. And ladies and gentlemen, we wish you a nice good night, and talk to you next week.
Take it easy. Thanks for listening to the Reviews Without Remorse podcast with Joe and Dave. Join us here every Thursday for a new episode. And be sure to check out the Reviews Without Remorse channel on YouTube and VidMe for spoiler-free reviews of new releases, as well as in-depth discussions of current and classic cinema. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider becoming a patron. You can find our page at patreon.com. As little as $1 a month goes a long way. All clips in this podcast are used for commentary and critique, and is considered fair use. No copyright infringement is intended.
Excuse me.
That's a bad outfit. Whoa!
Okay, Breslau, move these people. God, look up there.
What the hell is that?
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me. Who's got you? I can't believe it. I just cannot believe it. He got her.